Hello there everyone, today I will be unboxing the Soulcalibur 6 themed arcade stick by HORI. I got this in either November or December of last year when it briefly went on sale for super cheap. And even though I didn't need it, I got it anyway because it is themed after my favorite fighting game and it was super cheap. But like I said, I really didn't need it because I already have a fight stick that works on PS4 and I also have a fight stick that works on both PC and Switch. So when I got this, I got it with the intent of just keeping it sealed so I can just add it to my collection as a sort of collector's item. But more recently, I've kind of been thinking about doing an unboxing video, not only so I can see the artwork in real life, in the flesh, but also because I can share it with you guys. And once it's opened and unsealed, since it'll be unsealed anyways, I might as well play with it, right? Also, once I open this thing up, I will be unscrewing the back and modding in an octagonal restrictor gate because these fight sticks come stock with a square restrictor gate, which is standard in Japan, but I am more used to the octagonal restrictor gate, and so that's what I will be putting in, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. So, first things first, let's open it. Comes with a handle, by the way. So I could get a knife for this tape, but in most cases you can sort of push it like so. There's not much give here though. I would like to keep the box in pretty good condition just in case I ever want to repackage it or something like that. Even though I don't plan on ever, selling this by any means. But when the box is so nice with its own handle, it sort of feels like a briefcase or something, you know what I mean? One side out, or one tab out. I know scissors would make this so much easier, but I kind of pride myself on minimalism here, if you couldn't already tell. Other tab out, and I think that's the only thing, or it was the only thing, preventing us from getting inside. Here you can see the underside of the handle and how that works. I will slide it out on this side so that way it doesn't get caught on the handle. So once again, here's the artwork on the box. So let's see how accurate that is in real life. Also, I might as well show the back of the box as well. So is this saying it works on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, and PC? I find that pretty surprising because, like I said, I have a fight stick that works on PlayStation 4, but it doesn't work on PC, and my other fight stick works on Switch and PC, but not on PlayStation. That would be kind of nice if this one sort of crosses over between PlayStation and PC. Anyways, I'll have to test that later. So let's set the box aside over here. Now I will flip this because I do not want to set it on the stick itself, obviously, because it's not good to do that. So already it feels very heavy and very dense, even though my other fight stick is bigger than this, my Quanba Crystal. This feels just as heavy even though it's smaller than the other one. So it feels very dense and sturdy, which is nice. Some people might not like the heavy feeling of them, but I like it being heavy. So that way when it's in my lap, it doesn't feel like it'll fall off easily. I don't think there is an opening on this. I think we just have to tear it. Oh, wait. Not that I'm against tearing this kind of material, necessarily. But I'd rather minimize the amount of pieces of trash. I think this is the user manual. It's probably stuff I either already know or can figure out easily, but I will save that just in case. Just in case I can't figure out how to open it up or something. But I would assume it's not too different from other fight sticks. Something I am curious about, though, is that I've never handled a HORI stick before. So I'm kind of curious to see if this will feel any different from my other sticks, because I felt Sanwa parts, because my one stick has Sanwa buttons, and I felt Quanba parts, because my other stick has Quanba buttons, but I've never pressed or felt HORI buttons, so I do want to see if these feel or sound significantly different. Ooh, I see the art. Let's flip it around so it's not upside down when it's first revealed. So immediately you can see that the art looks pretty nice, with a nice shot of Siegfried and Nightmare behind him. I'm glad that neither of their faces are obstructed by the buttons or the stick too much, because I always find it really annoying if there's a cool piece of artwork on a stick, but then some sort of focal point is covered up by either like a button or a stick. So I'm glad that both their faces are pretty easily seen, and also the eyeball on Soul Edge as well, because I would say that's another pretty big focal point of the piece. So now to press the buttons. I have to say, they feel pretty nice. Also, noticeably, they are a little more clackier than the Sanwa buttons. Sanwa buttons, the sound they make is a little more smooth. This sounds a little more click-clacky, which I don't necessarily dislike, because I actually like having a lot of feedback, both in terms of a tactile sense, but also auditory feedback. Just that way I know for sure I am pressing the buttons when I want to press them. So personally, I think I kind of like the click-clackiness. Also, Sanwa and Quanba probably both have these sort of matte buttons, but in terms of my personal experience, all of these Sanwa buttons I've pressed and all of the Quanba buttons I've pressed are very smooth, whereas these buttons are very, they're a little matte. I don't know if you can tell just from the video, but if I get a close-up there, you might be able to see that they're not super reflective. They're a little matte, which I kind of like, because my hands are very sweaty, if you haven't noticed already. And so that's one of the reasons I use a fight stick in the first place, is because if I'm holding the stick on a fight stick, it doesn't matter how sweaty my hands are. I don't really have to worry about it slipping out, like if you were using a regular controller or a more typical controller. So I like that they're not super smooth. And I also like the clackiness of it. In terms of the springiness, I would say they feel about on par with a Sanwa. So I would say it's entirely personal preference if you like one over the other. As you can see here, there is the PlayStation button, and then probably like the select button in R3 and L3. Since you can't get L3 and R3 by pushing an analog sticks on this kind of thing, because, well, there are no analog sticks. Unless you count this, but that would be weird if you could push that in. but lots of times the L3 and R3 buttons are still useful in fighting games for like training mode. Sometimes you have to press R3 to record a move or something onto a training dummy and that kind of thing. And also, I think it's very considerate. I just really noticed this, but I think it's pretty considerate that the pause button or the start button is covered by this little shield. And that's because if you accidentally pause the game during a tournament or something like that, you will be disqualified, whether it was intentional or not. And so the fact that they put this there makes it so that way it'll be a lot more difficult to unintentionally push the start button. But when I flip this, I kind of feel like I'm about to fire a nuclear warhead or something. Like you have to enter some kind of nuclear code, it opens up, and some big cartoony button pops out, and you press it. So that's what this feels like. So I now feel more important when I press the start button. So let's look at the underside. I've already noticed that it's very grippy. Like I can't even push this around very much. So this does not seem like it'll be slipping around, which is nice. So this must be where you store the wire. And, oh, that's interesting. So the touchpad on the touchpad for the PS4 controller is put over here. You know that big giant button that has pretty much been reduced to a glorified map button in more recent years, even though it technically does have a touch sensor on it, although no games use the touch sensor really anymore. I mean, there are a few games that can use the touch sensor. Detroit Become Human is one that comes to mind, but outside of that, I can't think of many that use the touchpad. But like I said, it's pretty much just a big map button now, but some fighting games use this to reset the map in training mode. So like if you press it in the middle, it'll reset you to the middle. If you push it to the right, it'll reset you to the right side of the map, and then respectively, if you push the left side, it'll reset you to the left side. So this is still usable on a fight stick, so it is good that they still have this button. On my Quanba Crystal, though, it is on the front, so it's a lot more easy to reach, whereas this, it's on the back, as you can see. So it's not really that big of a deal, but it does mean you're going to have to reach over it, but I will quickly get used to that. Wow, my hands are sweaty. Okay, so now let's look at the bottom side. Not much going on here, obviously, but I just wanted to look at the rubber. It looks like the rubber on here needs to get pushed down a bit better because it's not completely flat, but it's not a big deal because we're going to be undoing these screws soon anyway. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to opening this thing up so we can put in the octagonal restrictor gate, but first I want to go find a box that I can set this thing on because I will be opening it up from the back, and like I already said, I do not want to set this down on the stick itself because I don't want to wear out the spring or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is find a box, and then I can set it on the open box, and this stick will go into the inside of the box without anything pushing on it. So I will go find a box, and then I will teleport back here. I found a good-sized box, and I already removed the address sticker on it, so you cannot dox me. Haha, nice try. So, like I said, I'm going to set this on here. Let's get another good look at the artwork before I flip it over. So it is now on the operating table. And so for these first screws, I found a comically long Phillips screwdriver, but I also have a little baby Phillips screwdriver because the screws that actually hold on the restrictor gate are actually very tiny. So they are not the same size as these, so you will need two screwdrivers. I finally noticed the warranty sticker here. So there is the final screw that needs to be done underneath the warranty sticker, and the whole point of having the warranty sticker on here is that way, well, you have to break this sticker off or peel it off in order to open it up, and then once you open up the thing, the warranty is void because it means you can start tinkering with it and messing it up, but I will trust myself in this case. Also, I just noticed this has a headphone port here, which is nice because neither of my other fight sticks have a headphone port. Rip the warranty. hopefully won't be needing it. Okay. Now we can see its innards. Move this to the side. And so it makes sense that each of these screws, which hold a bumper, correspond to a nut. I guess it's more of a bolt than a screw. So these bolts have a nut on the other side, which hold them down. So if you want to undo these, you'd have to do them separately. So you actually don't need to tinker with these at all when opening up the fight stick itself. Set this aside. Okay, so this is where the restrictor gate lies. As you can see, it is in a square shape right now. And the reason it's a square gate on Japanese sticks, the reason it comes stock like this, is because the Japanese arcades originally were like this, so typically the Japanese player base is used to these kinds of restrictor plates or restrictor gates, whereas American or Western arcades have the octagonal gate, which is why most of the Western audience is used to an octagonal gate at this point. However, I know that some specific characters, like charge characters, for example, like Guile and Street Fighter, can actually benefit off a square gate, but outside of weird examples like that, I think it makes way more sense to have an octagonal gate, because it's a lot easier to do fireball motions and DP motions and stuff like that. So, time for the baby screwdriver. It might be a little bit too much like a baby, because it seems like it's a little too small. So let's just use the comically long one. But I'm glad we have the baby one just in case, because sometimes they do require that. I'd like to do the rest by hand, but they're very small, and they're right beside another sort of piece of plastic, which is making it hard to grab them. There we go. So that is longer than I expected, so I will put that by the rest of these screws. Okay, so after all of that attempting, I was starting to think that this would be my first critique, in that it is way too hard to get these screws out, but once you unscrew the screws out of the threads, even if they're still in the hole, you can just pull this thing off. So that could have been done a lot faster. Or I will keep the box here so we can continue operating on it like this. I want to poke a hole in my green screen though, that's what I'm setting this on. So let's just push this against the back plate to push these screws through. See, I would say that's my one critique so far. The holes in the restrictor gate that it comes with are a little bit too small for the screws that go through, because the threads on the screws make it a little bit hard to pull these through. But we got them out. So I probably won't be using this anytime soon, but I will save it just so that way I can keep everything that this came with, and in case I ever start, playing some kind of weird charge character that benefits off this, I can put it in, or if I ever decide to sell it or let someone borrow it or something, if they prefer this, I can sell it or lend it away with both of the restrictor gates. Even though I have no plans on lending this or selling this to anyone. There we go. That is a very strong Ziploc seal, if I've ever felt one. So here is the restrictor gate. And this was put in this way, which means the little bumps, the little knobs here, the pegs, should be facing in the same direction as the stick itself. So it should go like this, I'm assuming. Yes. Okay. So the little pegs here go into the holes on the switches, which holds everything in place to make sure nothing's loose. One of the pegs doesn't seem to want to go into one of the holes fully, but I think that once I screw it down, it will sort of force itself in, so let's just try that. So looking at this more closely, even though it does have holes which correspond to the same place as the holes on the square gate to fit the screws through, these holes don't actually go all the way through. Because I'm guessing they're just a hole there to save plastic, because each of these holes has the peg on the other side. Which means, in theory, you could just push this up against the switches and have each of the pegs in, but it wouldn't be held very securely that way. And I think the reason it's designed this way is because, see these little things on the edges here? These little square protrusions? So these are here because on my other stick, for example, it can sort of get snapped into place because the stick itself would have these little plastic arms which can bend slightly, and then when you push it on, it's ramped so that way you can push it in, but then once it's snapped on, it'll be hard to remove. But this doesn't use that kind of system. This uses actual screws. But like I said, the screws can't go through this. So if I want to truly mod this in, I would have to somehow drill a little hole through to the other side of these pegs. So for now, I could just put this on and leave it there, and just leave this as a collector's item like I originally planned to, or I could put this on and try to get used to a square gate to sort of force myself to make smaller circles when I'm doing quarter circles or half circles or even full circles. Or, like I said, I could try to drill a tiny little hole through these. Well, the hole's already there, but I'd have to drill a hole through to the other side, so I could attempt that. Okay, so I came up with a solution. What I did is that I cut off the nubs with an X-Acto knife that I use for my Gundam models, and then I tried pushing through the thin plastic. Okay, so you know how the nubs are on top of the holes? I thought that by shaving off the nubs, the barrier of plastic would be thin enough that I could push through with these bolts, but it was still too thick. So what I did is I got a pointy screw of this size, and I screwed it through, and once it started to go through to the other side, once the screw itself started to expose itself on the other side, I stopped and I unscrewed it, just so that way, I wouldn't risk cracking the whole thing. So I just made a tiny little hole by screwing this through, And then I was able to screw these bolts through once the pointy screw had breached a hole through it. But then after doing that, a lot of the excess plastic was pushed through to the other side, and it was making it so that way this side wasn't flat anymore. So then I just shaved off the excess plastic and sanded it down with a sanding stick. So that is what I have here. So I basically fabricated my own threaded holes. So I haven't tried it yet, I haven't tried putting it on yet, so let's see if it works. I think it will, though. So it's supposed to go like that. Let's try with these new holes. Assuming it keeps going through with little resistance, I'm going to assume it went into the hole and is working as planned. So far, so good. And it looks like it's working. And I would expect the whole reason it didn't fit with this originally is just because this restrictor gate is a Sanwa part, so I'd imagine it works beautifully for Sanwa sticks, but for HORI sticks, maybe not necessarily, but with a little modification, it still works. I should also note that with my Quanba crystal, this Sanwa restrictor gate worked for that as well. So it seems to work for Sanwa sticks, Quanba sticks, at least the Quanba stick I have, and with a little modification will work for the HORI stick. Because what's funny is that, you know, all the proportions and everything are correct. It's just that you need to get holes through in parts where holes don't exist already. And I really did not want to just designate this arcade stick as a collector's piece after opening it up, because after opening it up, I really want to play with it. So I'm glad I came up with a way to fix this dilemma. Feels sturdy. Might need to screw this first one on a little bit deeper. Okay. 2 more. Uh-oh. So I know this can't be a user error because these screws or these bolts most definitely fit the restrictor gate on when it was using the square gate. And as far as the dimensions of the bolts themselves, I haven't changed them at all, so they should work. So I'm going to try this again. Maybe I just need to screw them on a bit tighter so they can reach threads. Feels sturdy, so yeah, maybe I just needed to screw them on a bit tighter. But this octagonal Sanwa gate doesn't seem to be any noticeably thicker than the square gate, so I don't think it's keeping the bolts from reaching the threads at all. At least not any more than the other gate was. If that is the case, though, I can sand it down a bit more so they can reach more easily. I'm going to dry this off once more so I can screw them on extra tight to make sure they are reaching whatever threads they're supposed to be reaching. Okay, let's see. Okay, it is on securely. Nice. So I'm guessing either they weren't screwed on down far enough to reach the threads, or maybe one of the pegs wasn't pushed in and that was keeping the gate from getting as close as possible. But either way, it is just as secure now, if not more secure than the square gate that came with it originally. So let's close this back up, finally, and then see how it feels. Last screw, do you want to do the honors? Nope. Okay then, I'll do it. Finally. Let's see how it feels. Oh yeah, that's much better for fireballs. Okay, so it feels good, but let's see how it plays.
My face! Break apart!